All right, welcome back to another episode of Just Buy Less Coffee, answering the deeper questions of American politics. My name is Troy, aka Keep Troy Blue. With me, as always, is Cathy Cannon, aka Cannon's Fodder. Got kind of a packed show today, Monday, beginning of May. We're going to get right into it with news that Cathy has not heard yet.
I know. I'm excited.
Breaking news to Cathy. There's a ban on pornography coming in the United States, Cathy. I wasn't sure if you're aware.
That's what happens when you let Catholics be president, man.
I know what a big fan of pornography you are, so I wanted to let you know.
You may For those listening at home, no, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, you have to tamp that shit down if Trump wins.
Sorry, Mom.
You're just into Sims porn.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Man.
We gotta have the Sims. We gotta have the Sims conversation at some point.
All right, so tell me what's our pornography ban?
Okay, so Project 2025. You're aware of what Project 2025 is, right?
Oh yeah, it's basically the Handmaid's Tale. How to?
Yeah, so it's the Project 2025 is the set of policy proposals that were put together by all these right wingers for how to transition the United States into a Christian nationalist authoritarian society in the first 180 days of Trump's second term. It's got all these horrifying things, but one of them is this ban on pornography, suggesting that everybody who produces or engages in pornography should be in prison. One of the big backers of that is this guy John McEntee, and if that name sounds familiar to people on TikTok, or I'm sure the face will look familiar to people on TikTok, he is a former Trump aide. I will get into his history a little bit, but here he was on Michael Knowles' show on the Daily Wire promoting this pornography ban. I'm going to show this.
Control. Very within your control. And you bring up the elephant in the room, which is a stain on not only society, but the entire dating culture, which is pornography.
Yeah.
And I think whenever America bans that, which will be happening at some point, everyone will be much better off. I know, people are like, what, you've never seen that? Heroin addicts know heroin's bad, So people, just because they've used it at some point, it's still addressing that fact. I think, guys have this way distorted view of the world and how that should work. And the minute that goes away, this country will flourish. I actually do believe that.
Right. You nip that one in the bud, hopefully.
So that's John McEntee. And if he looked familiar to people or sounded familiar, that's the date right stuff guy. It comes on.
I recognized him as soon as I saw him. I was like, oh, that fucker.
It's the guy that is always eating out in restaurants. Citing pithy little MAGA slogans. He's a contributor to Project 2025. I don't think people know his story really, really well. He was Trump's personal aide, body man. He got fired for a crippling gambling addiction, which got his security clearance revoked. Trump hired him back in 2020 to be his director of the Office of Personnel, White House Office of Personnel. Even though he couldn't get a security clearance, so do the math on that one in terms of Russia.
Man.
But in that position, in his higher position in 2020, after Biden won the election in 2020, McEntee and another person in the White House drafted a policy proposal. He was the one that drafted the policy proposal for the immediate withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan before Biden could take office. So essentially an immediate withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan to create chaos in the first few days of Biden's term. So that's that guy. Then after he left the White House, he got seed money from Peter Thiel to create this dating app. And now he's an obnoxious TikTok personality pushing.
Wait, hold on. I don't know about the dating app. What?
You don't know about the dating app? That's his main thing.
Yeah, I try to avoid the freaking right-wing men. I'm sorry. For my own sanity's sake.
That's how most people know that guy is. He's his TikToks are ads for his dating app, which is called The Right Stuff. And it's a dating app.
Oh, wait, the right wing. Yeah, the one where they can't get any women on it. And
no women have signed up for it.
Okay,
women have signed up, but it's not doing well.
Yeah, both of them.
It's a dating app for right wingers, for MAGA. Not doing very well because not a lot of women are signing up for it, shockingly.
Imagine that women don't want to sign up to date a bunch of misogynist assholes that want to impregnate them and abuse them. I can't imagine why that's not a successful adventure. You know what I'm saying?
Anyway, date right stuff guy, famous on TikTok, also a Trump advisor. Also a member of Project 2025, is trying to bring Christian nationalism to the United States, starting with, of all things, a ban on pornography. I guarantee you that guy has just like incredible amounts of pornography in his house. On his,
Not only that, I was like,
hard
do they
drive.
realize that like the only population of young people that vote for Republicans are frat boys? And you're not gonna win them over taking away their porn. It's half a porn, like it's half a frat's personality is their porn collection.
We should talk about the frat boys at Ole Miss later. Cover that.
God.
But so yeah, interesting. Hide your porn. In the first few days of a Trump presidency, not to mention bans on homosexuality and deportations and camps and all this
The
nationwide
way
ban on
they're
abortion.
so fucking open about it too. Like they're openly talking about building camps for I think they even used the term other undesirables, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh God, like that's straight out of
Muslim ban. Yeah.
Yeah, the Muslim ban was just the freaking Nuremberg laws. Like it's the parallels are fucking terrifying here. And I don't, but again, we've talked about the lack of education in this country. That's why everyone's walking right. Never mind. I'm angry.
The guy who's likely going to be the Trump's chief of staff has openly talked about moving the United States to Christian nationalism. His name is Russ Vought. So Russ Vought is the guy who was on the short list to be Trump's chief of staff, and he's like a major player in this Christian nationalism movement. So they're just openly talking about it. I mean, it's what they want to do, making this a Christian theocracy, putting a ban on all this stuff.
Yikes.
Some scary stuff. Ban, and that includes like contraception and IVF and all that. So just pure Gilead shit. So this morning, the big news this morning was that Hamas has accepted a ceasefire proposal that was written by Egypt and Qatar, or brokered by Egypt and Qatar, separate from the one that Israel has put forward, which has been on the table for a while, that Hamas has not considered. The news this morning was that Hamas would be willing to accept this proposal. The details on it are a little bit sketchy as of this recording, and by the time this comes out, it may be different. But as of this recording, we've had no response from Israel. So interesting that Hamas is willing to come to the table, I guess. I don't know. It might just be a ploy because they've got troops coming for Rafah now. I don't know. But essentially, the core of the agreement is a humanitarian release of hostages. So children, women, and the elderly, and a cessation of hostilities. But what do you think about this, Cannon? Hamas, is this Hamas like creeping towards a ceasefire here, actually, or is this just a strategic pause to prevent the stuff in Rafah, or what? What do you think?
A little bit of both. I think. Okay, do I get to put my conspiracy hat on?
Yep, here we go. Cannon's
right.
conspiracy hat, tinfoil.
And it's not like tinfoily. It's just like me reading political tea leaves. Okay, so we know international support for Israel has been waning, and the invasion of Rafah seems to be the red line in the sand, right? As to where European allies and American allies alike will basically say, fuck you, Bibi, you're on your own. And they've done so in such a way, they've negotiated enough like international deals and have enough support that if Bibi goes against all of this and goes into Rafah, that's kind of grounds to, nullify terms of treaties that we're like the reason we're stuck in this is because of a treaty that Bibi's giving us an out to here, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Which is stupid on his end, but he's also pretty fucking stupid. But what I think this could be is Hamas, and I hate to give them credit because I want to be clear, they are fucking terrorists. Okay. Like I want everyone to be aware that Hamas is not the good guy here just because Bibi's a bad guy. But they could be playing their hand here pretty well because Bibi even said deal or no deal, I'm going into Rafah, right? They might not have liked the deal he offered. So now by offering a counter agreement like this is a deal we're willing to go for. And we don't know the terms of it yet, obviously. And I know US officials are still looking through it and all of that stuff because it's new. But I would imagine if it was drafted by Egypt, you said, right?
Yeah, it's one of these like Egyptian brokering a deal kind of thing.
Right. And Egypt's been pretty reasonable here. So I can't imagine it's a bad deal, because Egypt has pretty normalized relations with Israel and with the Palestinian regions, right? So I'm guessing it would be a pretty fair deal, and that will make it even worse on Bibi. So if the Palestinian, or if Hamas has put forward a ceasefire agreement, and the whole world has told Bibi, don't go after Rafah, and Bibi goes after Rafah anyway, that puts Hamas in the sympathetic position that they shouldn't be in, because they, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I think they may be a little bit trying to bait Bibi here into, like, you either take this deal on our terms, which probably aren't much different than the terms Israel had. It's just a matter of, like, we want to be the ones that put it forward, that kind of fucking pissing contest.
Yeah, exactly.
But then we'll make Bibi look all the more unreasonable if he still goes into Rafah.
That's what I was thinking. I think it's less about like the language of the agreement and more just about the timing. I think Hamas is just sort of making this move now as Bibi's about to move into Rafah, to, as you said, like to sort of regain the upper hand in the situation, or just to make Bibi look like an asshole. Not that he,
they want to look like
that.
Exactly. Like, they want to look like the reasonable ones. They want to look like they're the ones that put the agreement forward. And it's like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't an almost verbatim thing, except for like move some words here and there. Sort of like when the House and the Senate both write a bill that says the same thing, but like, oh, we want to be the ones to introduce it. That's what I think it is.
Well, again, Israel, it's all related to hostage release, which has been the core of Israel's argument for war from the beginning. And Israel's had a ceasefire agreement on the table for weeks now, pertaining to hostage release. I don't know I don't think anyone knows the details yet, specifically of what's in this Egyptian deal. We do know it involves a humanitarian release of hostages, and I think they were saying a 40-day ceasefire.
It was something like that, or like 1 day for every person released, or something.
Time to get the hostages out. So
basically,
I mean, I think Israel's demanding the Israel deal is basically like, give us literally every single hostage immediately, and we will consider stopping. Enough time to like get your people to safety, and then we're coming after you anyway. Like that's kind of the Israel deal, right?
Which is not a good deal if you're Hamas. You know what I'm saying?
Israel deal is basically like, give us, we're either going to kill all of you now, including the hostages, or you could give us the hostages and we'll kill you later.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great offer, Bibi.
So I think this one is a lighter deal, and there was an unnamed Israeli official that said it was a lighter version of an existing Egyptian deal, and that it was unacceptable to the Israelis. Officially, there has not been any response from the Israeli government or from the United States government about this ceasefire, again authored by the Egyptians, agreed to by Hamas, but the timing of it is interesting, and I think it's 100% Hamas just being able to say, like, look, we offered the elderly, the women, and the children, and we were turned down.
And Bibi wants to kill us more than he wants to save them. Like, they're trying to like spin the narrative on it, but you know what I wish, and I've said this from the start, and I wish it would be considered here, because the Palestinian people are also hostages here, and they're hostages of Hamas. And this is, I think, where I get frustrated. And I think we're going here next in the outline to the protests and stuff, right? Because that is what I think is not getting enough attention, because first of all, there's the very black and white way that people are still looking at this, as if it's a war against Israel and Palestine, and it's not. It's a war against Israel and Hamas, and the Palestinians are the ones trapped in the middle of it. So, like, I've heard people characterize it as Hamas using the Palestinian people as a human shield, which is a correct characterization. But I think the language that I think would help people understand the situation a little bit better is that the Palestinian people are being held hostage in Gaza by Hamas. And the issue is that Bibi doesn't see that as his problem. He sees the killing of Palestinian civilians as something he can blame on Hamas. And Hamas sees the killing of Palestinian civilians as something they can blame on Bibi. And the people of Palestine are just literally disposable to both bad guys in this war. And that's why, Like I've seen some of the protests talking about like, oh, well, we just want people to divest from Israeli businesses. That's not going to accomplish anything, right? Like the things that they're asking for in the protests aren't going to achieve the objectives that they say they want. And I don't understand how that has gotten, I guess I do, because nobody understands anything, but that has gotten so lost in this conversation that it's going to prevent any real progress from happening here.
Mhm.
And I just, whatever.
The other
I don't see Israel taking this deal though.
the other the other thing is that the not often talked about is that in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, the Israelis are like on the verge of a fucking revolution right now. I
Mhm.
mean, the Israelis are pissed because it's clear that Benjamin Netanyahu has been more focused on exacting revenge against the Palestinian people than he has been on actually negotiating for getting the hostages out. And the Israeli people just want their family members back. They want the hostages out.
Yeah. Well, they
So
also want the fighting to stop because it's not like Hamas isn't still sending missiles into Israel either.
they just
Like,
attacked like a few days ago.
yeah.
But so if he has this deal on the table, if he has this deal on the table from Hamas to release like a chunk of the hostages and he turns it down and goes in and attacks Rafah, like I just think that the Israeli people are going to be just outraged, completely fucking outraged over
Especially
a move
when
like
doing so alienates them further from the world, right? Because like
that.
Germany, Britain, and the US are basically like bro, right? And like those three allies are basically what give Israel all of their arrogance. And if they lose all three of them in one go because they're just like such a hard on for killing people, I don't know, man.
My
It's
my big fear. So the other part of this was that the U.S. has just temporarily paused aid to Israel. Now everybody's being so cryptic about this Hamas deal, about this pausing this aid to Israel. Bibi was on the phone with Biden today, but it's also Holocaust Remembrance Day, so it could have also just been like a symbolic call that we always do to Israel on Holocaust Remembrance Day. But anyway, we've temporarily paused the arms shipments to Israel, and a lot of people speculating that might have something to do with this Rafah thing. I am starting to get genuinely worried that Bibi will cross that red line and attack Rafah, and Biden's not going to change his policy. I think at that point, Biden's lost the plot. I think at that point it's sort of over in terms of hoping that Biden's going to change his stance on Israel, and we're going to have to go into the election with a Democratic president that's pro-Israel in the middle of all this.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like there's a difference between being pro-Israel and being pro-Benjamin Netanyahu or the Likud government, right? Like they're not the same thing. And I was trying to explain this to somebody the other day, and I was like, look, because the conflation of Hamas with the Palestinian people and of this government with the Israeli people is really at the heart of the problem. The reason the protests are getting broken up is because the language is just on this side of anti-Semitism sometimes, and sometimes crosses
very
over.
blatantly anti-Semitic.
And it's
sometimes,
and it's because of the conflation of the two things. Hamas did that very intentionally. Like if you compare the very first charter that they wrote back in 1987 to the renewed one in 2017, all they did was change Judaism to Zionism. And they did that as a way of conflating the two because they're very different things. Like Zionist Jews and regular Jews are not the same. Like just like Christians and Christian nationalists aren't the same thing. And
it's actually a really good comparison. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's like what I was trying to say. I'm like, just like we here in America are suffering under laws and policies that we don't like by religious zealots, so too are the people of Israel suffering under their like Jewish nationalism. So Zionism is essentially Christian nationalism, Judaism edition, right? And Hamas is Christian nationalism, Islam edition. They're all extremist organizations. Like, and that's what we need to focus on, right? Like you can't equate all of the Islamic people with Islamic terrorists any more than you can like conflate all of the Christians in the world with Christian nationalists or all of the Jews in the world with Zionism. They're not the same thing.
The black and white thinking on both sides of the issue has just been like utterly frustrating. And it's not everybody. There's a whole lot of people that are making nuanced arguments, but
Or trying.
You have the conflation of Judaism with Zionism on both sides. You have the Zionist pro-Israeli people who are saying that being anti-Zionist, means wiping Jewish people off the face of the earth, which is not true. There are entire sects of Judaism that do not believe in the establishment of a Israeli state. It's very specifically stated that they believe that they are a people that live in diaspora. So, I mean, that's not even just a political motivation. There is a religious motivation to anti-Zionism within the Jewish faith as well. But there are also a lot of like reformist Jews who see that this version of the Jewish state has not been a good actor on the world stage. But then there's also on the other side of the people that are conflating Zionism with all of Judaism too. So it's just not,
I know, and that's
frustrating.
And I know, and it is frustrating because like you're not going to get to the real problem while you're continuously fighting off all of this bullshit. You know what I mean? And like, it's the other thing I saw. I don't know if you saw this. I'm kind of jumping randomly in my head here, but did you see Benjamin Netanyahu is like banning Al Jazeera?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
And I was like, that kind of tells you everything, because that's the one that's kind of been bringing the most international attention to the suffering in Gaza, right? And for Bibi's response to that, be like, well, fuck you, get out of my country. You can see that Israel, as we have supported Israel historically, is not this version of Israel. This is a very extremist version of that country. And I like... Do I think Biden is going to support Bibi going into Rafah? No, he's said as much, right?
That was his red line, which is why it's making me nervous, because I don't know what he's going to do. Like,
well,
is he actually going to say like, fuck you? Okay, we're out. Like, I want him to. I think he might. Everybody close to him is telling him to, including his wife. But he's had letters from like 90 Democrats in Congress urging him to stop supporting it. Like, at this point, he's got to that's my point, is like, at this point, he's either made up his mind or he isn't. I mean, an attack on Rafah would be the perfect time for Biden to say, okay, we're out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I think like all of this is. And like my thinking is, because remember, like the biggest issue is that we weren't the only players involved in these defense treaties, and we can't unilaterally break those treaties. But like I said, the British are speaking out, the Germans are speaking out, and the Americans are speaking out, and like that's a pretty like powerful trifecta right there. And
it's not like those three nations are going to like disagree. You know what I mean? It's not like we have bad relations with those nations.
Exactly. But that's kind of my point, is that like, if like we're all on the same page here, Bibi, we all give you a lot of support, Bibi, we're on your side to a point, Bibi, but if you do this, then we're gone. Is Benjamin Netanyahu willing to sever his ties with his closest allies? And are we?
I don't think he is.
I don't think he should be, because he's hanging on by a thread in there anyway, right? But I also think, and remember going back to a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the Iranian counterstrike on Israel after the whole thing, right? When you look at the people who were involved in that, remember the strange bedfellows we were talking about? And our relationship with Qatar has been getting very, like, I don't know what like the word I want is, like, advantageous, like very improved relations with Qatar, very, whatever. And if the reason that we've supported Israel all this time is because we needed a strong ally in that region,
right,
we might have replaced our strong ally in that region. And I think that's like something we could hang over Bibi's head right now. Like, look, we're friends with all of your neighbors right now, and you aren't really doing much as an ally for us anyway. It's kind of like that episode of The West Wing where it was like the one Democrat wouldn't vote for a bill, and he's like, I can't believe you'd primary me. I'm a Democrat. What good has it done us? What good has you being an ally done for us right now? Not a whole lot. So like, I've rallied my friends against you. I've made friends with people in your neighborhood that also don't like you. We could solve a lot of problems here. And I don't know what's going to happen. I just know a lot of things could happen. And Jesus Lord, like you said, I'm nervous.
Well, I mean, Bibi's looking at a ceasefire resolution from the United Nations. He's looking at investigations from the International Criminal Court. They have become a bad actor on the world stage. They've been universally condemned by almost everybody, except pretty much us and Germany. So
Yeah,
I
but we're
mean,
getting there.
you could make the argument that, you know, whatever treaty, like we don't make treaties with nations. We don't have like you know, conditionless support of nations to just brutalize civilians. I mean, at a certain point, if Bibi wants to walk through that door, I think it is fully incumbent on Biden to say, and look, it's not if Bibi decides to walk through that door, the attack on Palestine is not going to stop, because they have weapons. It's not like we will suddenly be taking all of their weapons away. We just won't be giving them new ones. But Bibi has to make a choice. Is he going to walk through that door and be truly on his own, or is he going to, you know, play ball a little bit? I still think that Bibi is a politician. I don't think he's I think he's losing it, but I don't think he's in like maniac phase yet. I still think he's a politician, and he's facing all this backlash at home over his inability to get these hostages out. I think
deciding he doesn't care about the hostages.
I think deciding to just give a middle finger to the United States would be particularly stinging for a lot of Israelis. I mean, a lot of Israelis, you know, are you know, tied to the United States in one way or another. I don't know. I just think that
a lot of Israelis are Americans living in Israel. Like,
he's going to be it's going to be a huge mistake. But what I'm worried about is that he just goes. I think he's bluffing, and I think somebody's got to call somebody's bluff here. I think if Bibi just goes ahead and attacks Rafah, and Biden doesn't do anything, then we're just pretty much that's that. I mean, I think we're pretty much we've got to deal with that, with the implications of that. So,
but the scary thing is and this doesn't get any attention in the media, PS, and I feel like it should be. But you know, Bibi and Erdogan, like Turkey guy, are closer than we should be comfortable with. You know, especially with their similar ideas as to how
similar governing styles,
if you will, right? And like that could be the other part of it, because we were worried about him a few years ago and his sort of oppression of, like, you know,
Erdogan.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, man. I would like to hope that there's a lot of really intense conversations going on in the room, and that the ICC hanging over Bibi's head will get him to behave. But I read a story this morning, right? He's telling them to evacuate Gaza. So whatever. I don't know.
Well, he said, they've dropped leaflets officially on Rafah telling people to leave to another one of these like bullshit beach hideaways with no services. So, I mean, it's sort of insulting.
I hate Benjamin Netanyahu so much. Can I make very clear that I hate this man so
at this
much?
point? If Biden doesn't do anything, if it's just status quo, that is on Biden, and that is Biden just ignoring everybody, because of at that point that becomes Biden's just personal feeling that he's got to support Israel no matter what, because he's been told so many fucking times how bad it's getting, how this is not a good idea. He's losing the young people, he's losing the vote. Like, he's been told that a million fucking times. If at this point he hasn't like you know, if he hasn't heard that and heeded that advice, he's on his own. He's doing this on his own, and he's, you know, he's gonna have to reap the consequences for his reelection. I still think he will be reelected, but this was it will have been a massive and deadly blunder on his part.
I know, because like I'm convinced, and I've been convinced for a long time, that the reason he's not stressing about losing support from young people right now is because he thinks he'll get it back once he solves this. But he's got to solve it, and it's not looking great at the moment. But again, I might not know everything going on, but I did notice that Barack Obama came out of the woodwork a week or so ago. And if I know one thing, it's that Barrio does not like Bibi. And the one thing that I think could pull him back out of his little retirement here is this motherfucker's not winning. Like, I could see Barack Obama coming and sitting down with Uncle Joe and being like, listen, Joey, right? You remember what a fucker this guy is? Remember when he was a fucker? When, like, I need Obama to have a little bit of a come to Jesus. Like, Obama and Jill need to sit Joe down with some ice cream and some whipped cream, everything, just the whole nine, like a whole Sunday, right? And be like, here's the situation, Joe.
It's his entire fucking legacy on the line. They've somehow managed to get Bibi to stop short of Rafah. Remember when he was going into Rafah like imminently before? We somehow managed to get him to stop. We've created this red line. This is Biden's entire legacy right here, because Biden's created this red line. If he enforces it, if he pulls out of Israel and we start to work with the international community to get Israel to stop doing this, he'll win re-election and he'll be solidified as one of the great foreign policy presidents of all time. If he lets Bibi Netanyahu bully him around and doesn't do anything about this, I mean, he's a joke. I mean, his presidency just becomes a joke. And I still think he'll win re-election, but at that point, like, he becomes one of the most unpopular incumbents of all time. I mean, it's just, it's,
and this is in a world where we had a George W. Bush. No, but like, what I really need to see is his Camp David Accord, like,
exactly. Like,
and,
why
and
is
not
it
necessarily Camp David, but he got to do something here. And I could see it, like, once again, Egypt and Israel, but also get, what's the PLO? You need the Palestinian Authority. Like, I don't know. And then Qatar will be in the room too. So it'll be more players than Camp David Accord, right? But that's what I need. I need some brilliant diplomacy coming out of Mr. 50 years on foreign services. I'm just
it's been handed to him on a silver platter, and he's just sort of shitting the bed. But
unless there's a bunch of shit going on that we haven't seen yet, which is entirely possible because a lot of foreign policy does not play out in public. And I'm willing to give benefit of the doubt and hope that that's happening, but I see no evidence as of this moment, and I'm worried.
Well, let's get on to the college protests. Starting with this horrific protest at Ole Miss. I'm assuming you saw the video of it. I'm not going to play it because it's really disturbing.
It's really gross.
But, Southern frat boys, SEC frat boys County are the absolute worst. And Mississippi. Like, Mississippi is the worst. I think the guy that was making monkey noises has been pretty much canceled. He was kicked out of that frat, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Like, there's a low bar for frat brothers, but I'm glad that at least that.
Well, somebody made a video today. It was pretty funny. It was like, okay, Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, has like a 97% acceptance rate. So that on top of Mississippi being like the 48th state for education in the country. So basically, if you live and come from one of Mississippi's garbage public schools, you're pretty much guaranteed to acceptance at the University of Mississippi. And that is one of the most backwater racist states. So you're getting a lot of fucking shitty people. Then you throw in Southern frat culture into that. I'm telling, like, you witnessed in that video a phenomenon of Southern SEC frat culture that not a lot of people know about. My brother knew about it because he went to the University of Alabama and pledged briefly at a fraternity at the University of Alabama, and quickly realized that shit was not happening, because those people are in a cult. They beat each other to a pulp. They psychologically torture each other. They are havens of racism. Just like the worst fucking people on earth, and you really saw it in that video, just how fucking terrible those frat boys are.
Like, remember the episode with my kids from UC or UF, like UF, SEC, South, like it's gross, and it always has.
I mean, and UF is like a prestigious, like UF is like if it's not a public Ivy, it's almost a public Ivy, right? Like, it's a great
Ivy
school.
of the South, but even still is just is embedded in Southern racism and stuff.
Yeah, even at UF, it's bad. So yeah.
Well, and now Ben Sass is in charge, but yeah, man, I get you. It's
but anyway, it was
angry.
So racist stuff coming out of Ole Miss at their protests. That kid got canceled. Basically, got kicked out of the frat. We'll see what happens with him. So what do you think about some of these other protests? Columbia, they had they seized control of a building, although there was only like a dozen or so. I heard there was only like a dozen or so people that took over Hamilton Hall. That's which is ironic.
I just want to know, did they start singing dun 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 doo doo doo? How does a bastard work?
I just think it's funny, the mob taking over Hamilton Hall is kind of ironic to me.
There's a certain irony to it. I have a lot of thoughts on the student protests, right? Because I have a lot of kids at these schools. I have kids. I have students at Yale. I have students at UF. I have students at
you have students at Yale.
Brown. I have No, I'm just saying, like, so I've heard a lot of firsthand stuff about what these protests are going on about. And the biggest issue with the protests is that they're protesting something very noble in a very bad way, because they don't understand the complexity of the problem, right? And I have talked to my kids about this, and I was like, look, I 100% support you're protesting in support of the Palestinian people, but you're not on Hamas's side. And they're like, no, Hamas is liberated. I'm like, no, they're not. I was like, I need you to understand this. And
when did this line start? Is this purely, sorry to interrupt you, but like
fucking TikTok as well.
Is this Hamas thing, is this coming from somewhere, or is this pure just the American education system has failed these kids? Because why are we all of a sudden supporting Hamas? We just haven't heard of Hamas before October 7th, and we just assume that they're the good guys.
Correct. They haven't heard of it. And this is evidence from like comments I'm getting on TikTok as well from people. Like they're like the TikTok lands and the college lands, the Gen Z lands facing this has the understanding that Hamas is a new organization, that they are liberators fighting their colonizers. And it's really like frustrating to me because is Israel like occupying the Palestinian territory? 100% they are. Have they created an apartheid government? 100% they have. Do they treat the Palestinian people poorly? Yes, 100% they do. So protesting all of those things, perfectly acceptable. I'm 100% on your side. But that does not mean Hamas is fighting for the Palestinian people. They are not fighting for the Palestinian people. They are using the Palestinian people as pawns in their goal of destroying Israel and killing Jewish people. And don't tell me that's Western propaganda. That is literally, they wrote that down themselves, published that 40 years ago, and said, this is what we want to do. They've edited the statement in years since then to clarify they want Jewish people dead. They've been very clear about it. They brag about their terrorist actions, and you know this, and they always have, right? They founded as an organization in 1987 because the PLO at the time, who a lot of people considered a terrorist group themselves, wasn't radical and violent enough for Hamas. So they were like, you know what we're going to do? Blow some people up. And that is where Hamas came from.
Well, the PLO was also socialist in nature, secular socialism for the Palestinians. And that's what's so frustrating about this is you have socialists in the United States and elsewhere who are just really backing the wrong horse here. I get that like PLO has been out of the game for a while and kind of defunct, and like the Palestinian Authority is not very popular either, but like Hamas was the Islamic organization that was founded to sort of put a religious fanatical flair on this whole thing. They weren't they're not there was another group that was the sort of socialist, secular freedom fighters, and they were pushed out by Hamas. You know what I mean? So, I mean, so it's interesting.
Like, for whatever reason, the kids have this narrative that Hamas are these liberators that want to create a secular government where Jews and Palestinians can live together in harmony.
No, they really don't.
No, sweetheart. That is literally what they formed to stop from happening, because like Arafat was fighting for that, right? Like that Ariel Sharon and Yasser Arafat were the closest we ever got to the secular version of these religions living, cohabitating together, right? And oddly enough, it was Bill fucking Clinton that almost made that happen. P.S. And by the way, but that is not what Hamas is. Hamas is they're the MAGA of the Muslim world. They really are, and they always have been. And like I told the kids once, and I was like, do me a favor. And I told them to Google it because they're basing this all on TikTok videos they had. Like once upon a time, they learned that they could get their news from TikTok. And I can't even say anything because we get news from TikTok too. But now they believe everything they see on TikTok, which means they saw a video of somebody saying Hamas were the good guys because Israel's the bad guys. Therefore, Hamas are the good guys. So I had the kids today. I'm like, do me a favor. Google Hamas, right? And then they found this article, Hamas in their own words, and they started reading, and they're like, Miss, they hate gay people. And yes, they do. Keep reading. Miss, they hate women. Yes, they do. Keep reading. And the more they were reading, they're like, Miss, I don't think I like these guys. I'm like, correct. Like, you don't like these guys. Now, that doesn't mean that we want the Palestinian people to die. No, we don't. We 100% support saving the Palestinian people. But I need you to understand, to save the Palestinian people, you must stop Benjamin Netanyahu's indiscriminate bombing of the Gaza Strip and get rid of Hamas holding the Palestinian people hostage. Both of those things need to happen for this to end well. Everyone sucks here, right? I actually heard it on like Pod Save America the other day. Like a guy was on the show and he compared it to the "Am I the asshole" thing on Reddit, right? Like, am I the asshole? Or are they the asshole? Whatever. And it's the everyone sucks here, okay? Benjamin Netanyahu and everyone in his government fucking suck. Hamas fucking sucks, right? The American government dealing with this fucking sucks right now. Everyone sucks. And sadly, the people paying the price are the Palestinian people because no one is helping them. So you're 100% correct in advocating for the protection and humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people. But you cannot start like waving Hezbollah flags. You cannot start chanting, "We are Hamas," because especially at Columbia University, they're like, well, why is Columbia freaking out so bad? I'm like, Columbia is like 3 miles, I think, from World Trade Center, right?
Yeah.
You can't start waving around pro-terrorist flags 5 miles away from where the friends of those terrorists killed 3,000 of your neighbors.
I just think it's, and just to be clear, there is a separate Hamas flag from the Palestinian flag. But I just think it's interesting that, you know, the leaders of Hamas don't live in the Gaza Strip. They don't even live in Palestine.
Qatar, I think one of them. Right?
They're very, very wealthy millionaires, if not billionaires, that live in either Qatar or UAE. I can't remember which.
So I think some are in both. Like that's
they are wealthy, fucking basically behind the scenes string pullers that don't even live. They don't live in Gaza. And they don't do any of the fighting. They basically just pass down orders to their loyal army of sycophants, and they carry the true believers are the ones on the ground carrying it out. They are a classic sort of what's the word for, like Osama bin Laden was the same way. Like he would order people to do things that but he was never part of like
right.
He
and
wouldn't.
That's why they don't care.
He was always removed from the violence. He would make other people do his violent shit for him. They don't care. They're like, you know, at least some of these revolutionary groups, you know, at least have your people on the fucking ground doing the fighting if you're really going to believe, you know, believe in the mission. But I mean,
and that's
which is also what pisses me off about Israel too, is like, why are you attacking Gaza where all the civilians are when you know that the people that planned it and ordered it are not in Gaza? Like, go get those guys.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to kill, like, you didn't have to kill tens of thousands of civilians to stop Hamas. You just had to go like assassinate the leadership. And I guarantee you, you know where they are. That's what's so disingenuous about this. They have the best intelligence service in the world in the Mossad. I guarantee you, they know exactly where the Hamas leadership is. And they decided instead to do like this scorched earth campaign in Gaza, which is just so fucking like, it's gross.
Well, that's Bibi, just his petulant payback because his brother was killed by Palestinians once upon a long ago, right? And that's what it is. Like, I made a video on TikTok this weekend basically characterizing this for people. I'm like, what you have to understand, and the reason that reason isn't working to get through to these people is that you're not dealing with this. You're dealing with religious zealots on both sides. You've got a zealous Israeli government hell-bent on committed to killing the Palestinians because the only way that they get their holy land is to destroy the people who have it, which to them is the Arab Muslim world, right? And you've got Hamas, who doesn't think Israel should exist, doesn't think Jewish people deserve to exist, and would happily kill everybody in Israel. Everybody, Palestinian, Christian, everybody alike, anybody who supports the Israeli government or the Jewish people in any way, Hamas will happily kill, Americans included. It's a religious war. And I understand that not everybody in Israel and Palestine are religious fanatics supporting it, but the people running it are. And like you said, like the heads of Hamas are not in the Gaza Strip. And that is why they don't care what happens to the people in the Gaza Strip, because the Palestinians are cannon fodder for their war. Look, I did it again. And their people on the ground are the same kind of like suicide bombers that Osama bin Laden had, right? Like they don't care if they die in the war. They want to die in the war because they've been promised their 72 virgins, remember?
It reminds me of when after 9/11, when Osama bin Laden, they had like a recording or something of him with his top guys, and they were like, Jesus, I can't believe they fucking did it. Like, you know what I mean? Like they got news that 9/11, they were so far removed from it that they got news that 9/11 had gone off successfully, and they're like, wow, I can't believe those guys actually did that. That's crazy.
Into actually doing that. Exactly.
Like, wow. And they were like laughing about it. They're like, okay, let's toast to those guys. Like, great job.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's
so
what it is. Like, they're taking advantage of people's religious fervor and getting them to do crazy shit. And that is what is happening here. That's why the Israeli government won't back down, because they think God is on their side. And Hamas won't back down because they think God is on their side. And when you're trying to negotiate with no, God's on my team, no, God's on my team, logic isn't going to get through that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, and what the Palestinians need is a serious reform, a serious revolution movement that's democratically focused, and that's serious about establishing a nation for the Palestinians. And we just have not had that. We haven't had that since Yasser Arafat left the scene. I mean, we
it was like
used to,
2002.
the Palestinians used to have serious leadership that was seriously interested in a two-state solution and getting rights for their people. And now the Palestinian leadership is not doing that. It's not a serious, it's an extractive movement. They use their people as cannon fodder. And it's a really sad situation. And again, two things can be true at once. Israel could be a terrible colonial occupier that's brutalizing a people, but that doesn't mean that the Palestinian leadership is good in any way.
Yep, correct.
The other thing on this was just the history on this, and getting arrested on campus and all this. It's just once again, it just very reminds me of 1968, and especially Colombia. In Colombia in the 60s, I think we said it was 69 when this happened. It was a little bit different in the 60s when they occupied the buildings in Colombia in the late 60s. The police came in and just beat them to a fucking pulp. I mean, they were like, the police back then were a lot more intense than they.
Well, the police now are pretty intense too. And that's the other thing. And that's the other thing about the protests, right? Is do the police also suck? Yes, because the police are going to react in an overly violent way, as we've seen with the police in every example, like ever, right? The Colombia administration is overreacting because they're sensitive about like terrorism because, duh.
The overreactions by the administration. The administrations have been just complete clowns and all this.
I know.
And that's across the board. USC, all these universities have just been absolute clowns in this whole.
Well, there've been a couple that have been okay. I think it was Dartmouth and Brown.
Yeah, Dartmouth and Brown. Yeah.
Yeah, like they both like met with their student organizations. They were able to talk, and that's kind of like a really good example as to like the difference here is that Columbia, USC, all of them, they are responding to the student protests the way Bibi is responding to the whatever, right? With violence and irrationality.
Just ridiculous irrationality.
And whereas Brown and Dartmouth are responding with diplomacy. I hear you. Let's sit down and talk about it. We'll discuss how we can do it. And like I mentioned to you, like there are a lot of them are calling for like a divestment from Israeli businesses. And like, I am of the opinion that that is not going to gain the objective they want. They want an end to the war. Like not buying like Jewish matzah balls is not going to do that. Okay. And that's being a little facetious, I understand. But like the point is that Dartmouth was willing to say, well, we'll sit down. We'll talk about what that would mean and how it would work. And I sat and like the one thing I know about Gen Z is that all they want is to understand what's going on. And the Dartmouth and Brown are sitting them down and willing to explain, this is what you're asking for. This is what would happen if we do what you're asking for. And this is what we would have to solve if we do that. And that's all they really want is to be taken seriously. Because I was talking to one of my kids about it because they were saying the same thing was going on at UCF. And I was like, what will that, it's like, tell me, what is your plan? And they didn't really have a plan. They saw something that they said sounded like a good idea and they're asking for it. I was like, how will it help your cause? And once you steer them toward that, they're willing to work for productive things. They just don't know what is productive. So they heard something. They're like, sounds good to me. Let's go for it. So I just like a little bit of guidance here, a little bit of, intentionality. And I think we can have some effective protests.
We should do a whole breakdown on what's happened to universities and how they've essentially just become like hedge funds, and their main objective is how they invest their endowments, and they're sort of like hedge fund investors that also happen to run a school. And the way they treat the academic staff is abhorrent, and it's sort of bad across the board.
Yeah, and like it's really like I've seen this with kids like applying to school. Like it's so fucking blatant how these schools are so crooked now. Like they'll nickel and dime these kids for everything. And like you said, it's all like schools have become just political wing. And I think Post Citizens United too is part of it, right? Because they can be like a source of money laundering now legally. So why the fuck not?
Let's talk a little bit about the parallels with 68 though, because we were having this conversation earlier, and I think it's really I think it's really interesting. We were talking about the movie, the Trial of the Chicago
Chicago 7, yeah.
Trial of the Chicago 7, which is a great movie if everybody wants to go watch it. Sacha Baron
Bibi.
Cohen
Yeah.
as Abby Hoffman, which is like my favorite. The only performance from Sacha Baron Cohen that I actually enjoy is him playing Abby Hoffman because he's just incredible as Abby Hoffman.
Yeah. Because he's as annoying as Abby Hoffman was in real life.
Yeah, because they're kind of the same person. They're kind of just self-absorbed, like just completely insufferable.
Yes, the movie is available on Netflix for anybody out in the world that wants to watch it, but it's fantastic.
But we were talking earlier, and I just think the parallels between what's going on and what happened in the 60s. I'm just saying don't take the boomer track, because we've seen this before. What we had was a guy named Jerry Rubin who was very involved in this movement, the Yippie movement, and the Youth International, really hardcore protesting. The kids today seem to be emulating what was happening with the campus protests in the 60s, what was going on in Chicago. But I always remember the story of Jerry Rubin because it's incredible. Like, he was this radical leader and very not nonviolent, very revolutionary. And he sort of became emblematic of the boomers selling out over the over the decades. By the 1980s, Jerry Rubin had become this like Wall Street fucking investor, day trader guy, a total Reaganite. Like, said he looked back on his college years in the 60s, like he just realized that he was young and stupid. So I don't know. I think nobody epitomizes the 60s, like the boomer movement of the 60s, more than Jerry Rubin.
But then there was Rennie Davis too, who's funny, who was like somewhere in the middle. Like, he kept his ideals, but still sold out to business, right? Like, became a venture capitalist, but like the kinds that sells self-help crap, right? So it's like, oh, Rennie.
The boomers all like lost their radicalism like in the 80s, and they went from hippies to yuppies, and they just became like totally obsessed with getting rich and all this. So.
Yeah, but it was Tom Hayden, and this was what we were talking about in the pre-show. So those of you who want to hear the raw conversation of this, go be patrons, god damn it. But like Tom Hayden is like my favorite from this, because in the 1960s he was like the brain trust for this. Like, basically he wrote the Port Huron Statement. I know, I can't even talk, which basically was like in 1962, I think it was, like basically kicked off like the student like activism of the 1960s, essentially. And that created the Students for Democratic Society. But he got a lot of heat from the hippies at the time, the Abby Hoffmans of the world, for being too straight-laced and a sellout, right? But he's the only one that kept his ideals his whole entire life. And he got mad at how like the super duper far radical left, who became like the Weather Underground later, and they're like, trashing buildings, bombing buildings, like the kind of violence that you see coming out of some of the protests, not all of them, but some of them, right?
Well, that's the direction they're going, which scares me.
Yeah, and that is what ruins the Democratic Party in general, but it's also what killed the New Left movement of the 60s and opens the door for the Nixon era, followed by the Reagan era, right? And it's like, if you watch that movie, you can see the tension between Hayden and Hoffman as it plays out, like while they're in like in between the trial days or whatever. And it's so relevant to what's happening now, because Hayden has the idea. It's like I have the same goals as you. I just know to use the system to get there. And it's like how I feel when I'm explaining, like, I'm on your side. I want a free Palestine too. But like Abby Hoffmans of the world, that's not going to be how you get it. In fact, that's going to be how you turn people off to what you want and lose what you're trying to fight for. Because like I said, we've seen it happen, because the New Left of the 1960s was completely right to be protesting the atrocities of the Vietnam War, the treatment of not just the Vietnamese people, but the soldiers fighting in Vietnam, and how poorly they were taken care of. And like, while in Vietnam and when they got home, like the PTSD of it, the whole thing, they were completely in the moral, like, correct place there. But because their movement was hijacked by people who didn't want to do things the way they're done, they didn't want to be diplomatic, they didn't want to, use the systems in place to make change. They just wanted to burn shit to the ground. Burn shit to the ground turned everybody off and set back civil rights for half a century.
Yeah.
And you're about to do it again.
Because subscribe to the Patreon for the pre-show for more of that. But yeah, so Yeah, the dichotomy that you had with Tom Hayden, who was no fucking joke. Like like Cathy said, he wrote the Port Huron statement. He basically helped to create the student left, the new left in this country, SDS, which was essentially the originator of the campus protests, the college protests against first for civil rights and then against the Vietnam War. He was sort of the OG. In the late 60s, there was literally a coup in the Students for Democratic Society. They were taken over by the radical left, the Weather Underground and SNCC, which had become radical at that point as well. They were just called the Weathermen at that point, and SNCC. They took over SDS in a coup, forced out Hayden and sort of the, I don't even want to call them moderates because they weren't moderates. They were like far left people. They just weren't violent. They weren't violent about it. And Hayden has said literally that it was organizational piracy, that basically they took away his organization that he had helped build, that was working on political solutions to these problems, that were getting people elected, that were fighting for the exact same thing, just doing it in a peaceful way. And it was literally taken over by a terrorist group, and the SDS and became synonymous with the Weather Underground in the early 70s, which was just blowing up buildings, and they didn't achieve the goddamn thing. So,
and it ended up killing the labor movement as well, because if you remember, the student protesters at the time had teamed up with like auto workers, right, and a couple other unions, I think, at the time. So when the leftist protesters in the 60s tarnished the leftist movement, it made it easy to vilify labor. And did Reagan vilify labor by associating them with fucking Stalinist hippies that were burnt? Yes, he did. And look at your wages. That's their fault too, right? Like all of it. But what I love about Tom Hayden, little aside, is that I feel like he's my kindred soul, right? Because he grew up. No, I know, like I'm saying, but I feel like he grew up with a crazy Catholic upbringing with Irish immigrant parents. He too is a December Sagittarius, is all I'm saying, right? I'm just saying, because I remember learning about this. Remember Father Coughlin, like the fucking crazy Father Coughlin guy? Tom Hayden, as a child, went to his church.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, and he basically as a child was like, this motherfucker, right? And his radicalism was born out of crazy priests just like mine, and that's why I want to be his best friend. So, Tom Hayden, if you're out there, I love you, my friend.
Great movies, Trial of Chicago 7, starring Eddie Redmayne as Tom Hayden and Sacha Baron Cohen as Abby Hoffman. So interesting, the dichotomy of the Tom Haydens who were considered sellouts because they wanted to take a political solution, with people like Jerry Rubin, who were supposedly the radicals, and then by the 80s Jerry Rubin was a Reaganite and a Wall Street investor.
Dude, he actually died. I just looked it up. He died back in 2016. Yeah. I could see why it got lost, because he died October 23rd, 2016. So he died the same day that James Comey came out and basically said, we're investigating Hillary Clinton for no reason whatsoever. So
he died on Comey Day. That's sad.
He died on Comey Day, which, if you think about it, given how much politics fucked him over, is
Hayden.
They stole his movement. Oh God, poor Tom
Hayden.
But also, he can't be my friend now because he's already dead.
Well, that's
you know what? If you want to haunt somebody, Tom, I'm just saying. He was married to Jane Fonda. Did you know that?
I think I did know that. Yeah, really underrated guy in history. The other funny moment on that was in The Big Lebowski. Remember The Big Lebowski, when he's smoking weed with Julianne Moore's character, and he's giving her his resume. She's like, tell me about yourself. What's his name? Jeffrey. Yeah, tell me about yourself, Jeffrey. And he's like, well, I was one of the authors of the Port Huron Statement, the original version, not the compromised second draft. That was a hilarious line of that movie. If you know,
that was funny.
If you know the history,
I forgot about that. I forgot about that entirely. That's super funny.
Spent my time occupying various buildings and.
No bags.
We're gonna move into Troy's lie of the week, and it is a big one, people.
You're a lying, scheming, stinking, nasty sack of liquid crap. You're a lying sack of crap. You're a lying
there's a second verse.
Crap. You're a lying, scheming, stinking, nasty sack of liquid crap.
All right, today's lie of the week is Kristi Noem. A lot of people may have heard about this already. We talked about her last time, about bragging about killing her puppy because it was annoying her. In this book, Never Back Down, that's coming out this week, The audio version comes out tomorrow as of this recording. Kristi Noem was on the Sunday Talk Show this weekend promoting the book, the very book where she admits to killing her puppy because it was annoying her. And a very, very awkward moment ensued in this interview.
Meaning some world leaders,
Sunday.
and one specific one. Quote, I remember when I met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. I've been a children's pastor after all. Did you meet Kim Jong-un?
Well, you know, as soon as this was brought to my attention, I certainly made some changes and looked at this passage.
painful.
And I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. As soon as it was brought to my attention, we went forward and have made some edits. So I'm glad that this book is being released in a couple of days, and that those edits will be in place, and that people will have the updated version.
So you did not meet with Kim Jong-un. That's what you're saying.
No, I've met with many, many world leaders.
Ooh, awkward as fuck.
First of all, she does not understand how book publishing works. Like it's coming out in a few days, but they'll have fixed the 10,000 copies. No, they will not have, sweetheart. No, they will not have.
So clearly, I mean, like clearly with her language, she had the book ghostwritten, right? Like when this was brought to my attention, so she clearly didn't write it herself, right?
But didn't you say she read the audiobook?
But
So like
she's listed as the narrator on the audiobook, so she had to have read it. Like she literally read it. She had to have gone into a recording booth and read the book as the narrator of the audiobook. I guess we'll know when it finally comes out tomorrow if she is actually the reader, in which case I'm going to need the internet to do its thing and get us some viral clips of Kristi Noem, reciting the memory of killing her own puppy. But how the fuck did she not know that this was in the book? Even if she didn't write it, that makes absolutely no fucking sense to me. That's just so bizarre. Like, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think she tried to get away with a lie that she met with Kim Jong-un. Like
100% she tried to get away with a lie. Like
Ridiculous.
she was counting on the fact that Republicans don't actually read. They would buy her book so she could make her money, but they'd never read it, so she wouldn't have to
it would just
own
sit on their
anything.
shelf. Yeah.
But I will say there's one thing that I think isn't getting enough attention in this, and it's the fact that she's like, the little tyrants. I was a child's pastor, by the way. I was like, so not only do you kill puppies, but you view children as tyrannical. Like you don't like children or puppies. Like you don't like children or puppies. And that's kind of like the two basic fake it as a politician. Like you pretend to like puppies, you pretend to like babies. That's what you do as a politician. And the final thing I will say about her is she is a walking poster for bad plastic surgery. Like,
have you seen the pictures of her from before? She doesn't look anything like that. She looks totally different.
They just stretched her face a little bit too much as well.
She had an affair with Corey Lewandowski. Did you know that? That was the other sort of scandal that people forgot about.
Yeah, that's disgusting. But
so she gets called out the Sunday before her book comes out about a passage where she claims to have stared down Kim Jong-un, which is verifiably not true that she has ever met Kim Jong-un. It's not like, people just meet Kim Jong-un. It's not easy to meet Kim Jong-un. You can't. That one is a little bit hard.
People don't go in and out of North Korea often. It's usually international news.
When an American meets with Kim Jong-un, it's usually a pretty big deal. It's only happened a couple
Dennis
times.
Rodman, right?
Yeah, Dennis Rodman's the only one that has a free pass to go to North Korea. So she thought she could get away with this. It's just so fucking painful. She's such a horrible, horrible person.
I know.
This is it. Then Cathy, then she basically goes on and proceeds to threaten Joe Biden's dog. Like she's like threatening Commander Biden. In the next segment.
On this point, though, because you have been rumored to be a potential vice presidential candidate, as you know, and former House Speaker Newt Gingrich said killing the dog and then writing about it ended any possibility of her being picked as VP. You talk multiple times about it. In fact, at the end of the book, you say the very first thing you would do if you got to the White House that was different from Joe Biden is you'd make sure Joe Biden's dog was nowhere on the grounds. Commander, say hello to Cricket. Are you doing this to try to look tough? Do you still think that you have a shot at being a VP?
Well, number one, Joe Biden's dog has attacked 24 Secret Service people. So how many people is enough people to be attacked and dangerously
That's enough of that bullshit. You're threatening fucking Joe Biden's dog. You killed your own dog, and now you're threatening someone else's. You're threatening to kill someone else's fucking dog.
So I was going to say, if I'm to follow this correctly, not only is she doubling down on being a puppy killer, but she's promising to kill more puppies.
Pretty much, yeah.
This is the winning strategy.
She said something like Commander should have, like Biden should have had the courage to do to Commander what I did to Cricket or something like that. So
yikes.
Yeah.
That's yikes.
The Commander would meet in the book. Is the Commander would end up with Cricket or whatever the fuck the line was. Meet Cricket.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Oh, it's so bad. It's just so bad.
My God.
So now they've had to script. So she's doubling down on the puppy murder. She has freaking the fuck out about the meeting Kim Jong-un bit. The publishing company Center Street Publishing released a statement saying that they were at her request removing all instances of the Kim Jong-un meeting event in the book, but prior to the release, which is this fucking week. So like, I don't know how that's going to cost them so much fucking money if they have to reprint everything. The audio is a little different because it's just MP3s these days. So I guess they could just release like a new standard MP3 file. But if they have to scrub that, have to scrub that from the physical copies. They're going to have to reprint, every single copy of that book. I mean, she's just cost all the profits that any profits she's going to make on that book because they had to reprint.
Like she was going to make any profits, but oh God, she's a psychopath. There's no other word. She's a fucking psychopath. Like all of them, they're all fucking psychopaths.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Disturbed.
Pretty bad. Anyway, Kristi Noem claiming to have met Kim Jong-un when she never has, and forcing it to be scrubbed from her book only after she got called on it on a Sunday talk show, is the winner of this week's Live.
Sack of crap. You're a lying sack of crap. You're a lying, scheming, stinking, nasty sack of liquid crap.
Fucking delightful. Well, on an uplifting note, should we share what Cathy learned from her kids today?
Yeah, let's go out on a high note, Cathy.
So in the aftermath of the AP Gov test, which they all took and then came back brain dead, they decided to teach me something very important.
Okay,
and that is the beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake.
I've heard about this and I have completely ignored it. So I'm glad that somebody will tell me about it because I wasn't.
I'm a little overwhelmed because there's a lot to it and it goes back a long way. But apparently they've been like releasing like diss tracks back and forth.
Yeah, I heard that.
And what I have learned, and again, I'm new to this, so whatever. Apparently Drake is a pedophile. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Like I said, I don't know anything about this beef.
So Drake is a pedophile, and in one of his like response, because Kendrick Lamar, I can't remember. There's like a bunch of songs, so I don't really know him. But like Kendrick Lamar made some like comment where he's like being really, really like clever about it. He was like, "You're singing in A minor, get it? A minor."
So wait, he's just like a known pedophile, but like not officially. Like he wasn't arrested.
Apparently, no, he hasn't been arrested or anything. But apparently, he dated one of the Kardashians when they were teenagers. And I was like, all right, well, I don't know this. There was a story about how he exchanged numbers with Millie Bobby Brown when she was like 14 or whatever. And like somebody because it was the whole thing going, there's Team Kendrick and there's Team Drake. Team Drake is very small. It's like 2 kids in 4th period and Uma Thurman, apparently. But like Rick Ross got called into this, like Rihanna, Kanye is involved somehow.
Oh, dear Lord.
I learned all sorts of things. I also finally learned what a BBL was because I've been going through life just hoping that would reveal itself to me because I was too embarrassed to ask what it meant. But now I know.
A BBL? What does that mean?
Yeah, I didn't know. It's Brazilian butt lift. I didn't know that, but I know now.
Okay.
And then it was explained to me what that is. And it's apparently breast implants, but for your butt. So it's butt implants, whatever. The universe revealed it to me. Lift. You know what? I never knew what it was, and I was too embarrassed to ask because I'm already an old, uncool lady. So I learned what that meant because apparently there's a song, like one of the diss tracks is about it or whatever. But like in one of Drake's response songs, he's like, I ain't no pedophile. I'm too famous to be a pedophile. And they're like playing this for me. I'm like, hold on. I think if you've reached the point in your life where you have to publicly come out loud and say, I'm not a pedophile, you've lost already. Like you've lost the battle on that
in
one.
A minor. That's clever. That's pretty fun.
It was actually pretty clever. So this has been going back and forth, and like new songs just dropped yesterday, and like one of the girls was like on my whiteboard drawing she was doing the whole Charlie Day thing, right? So what I can say is If you need a playful rabbit hole to go down that a little bit feels like Puff Daddy Tupac, a little bit from back in the day, Kendrick Lamar and Drake
Tupac and
have,
Biggie.
yeah, there you go. That's what it was. Like they have some beef, man, and apparently Drake is a creep. And apparently, oh, that's the other thing I
I've
learned.
heard that.
He may have also been like murdered XX Dacian, whatever, triple X date, like whatever, the kid who died, whatever. And
Really?
he died like in Deerfield Beach. So he's like buried in Boca Raton, where I grew up, like in the same like graveyard as my friends from when I was a kid. And I was like, all of these things I didn't know happened. But yeah, Drake is a pedophile and potentially a murderer.
Drake is, well, he's, yes. I mean, Drake is apparently just a complete fucking scumbag, or he's innocent, and just the smear campaign that's been going on against him is one of the most calculated in history, because I've been seeing like fucked up shit about Drake coming out too, and I'm not in this world at all.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I heard that the rumor is do you know Alicia Lehman?
That sounds like a name that one of the kids said today, because I was learning a lot of names.
She's a football player, soccer player for the ladies Aston Villa team. And she's like gorgeous. She's just like she's a really good player, but she's also just famous for being like stunningly gorgeous. The rumor is that a famous rapper, had offered her $100,000 to spend the night with him, and like she turned it down, and the only rumored person is Drake. Like pretty much everyone was assured that it was Drake.
Yeah,
so, a lot of stuff.
Like the kids were showing me pictures of him like sitting with girls, and like, because you know how he was sort of famous because he was like the music maker, right? Like kind of like Usher, he would discover artists and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, apparently there was some nefarious goings on there, and like one of the girls was trying to defend him, like, no, he's not a pedophile, he is just helping people. So then another kid pulled up pictures of him with those supposed girls that he had these relationships with, and I looked and I was like, oh, I don't like that. No man should look at a child the way, like, you don't like nope, like, you know how you can just tell, right? Like,
he's on that Epstein list probably.
Well, his name shows up in one of the diss tracks is all I can say, so I can't remember one.
If Drake is listening, we were just repeating rumors. We're not insinuating, you know, everybody's innocent until proven
about any of this. I just know this was the adventure. So the kids, in response for studying for my gov test all weekend, insisted on teaching me about Kendrick Lamar and Drake. So I didn't like, I learned about as much as they did from Gov. How about that? Like, I know about like, I could pass this test as well as they passed mine.
I was never that into Drake. I mean, I like a few of his songs. I'm not into this generation of hip hop, to be honest with you. I'm just not.
I know he's Canadian. I learned that.
Yeah, he's Canadian.
You know he was Canadian.
Kendrick Lamar is good.
He's Canadian too, apparently. They're all Canadians.
That's really
and that
weird.
was one of the kids said to me. They're like, I thought Canadians were supposed to be nice. I was like, apparently not.
Apparently not. Not if you're not if you're in that world. Biggie and Tupac had a beef over Lil' Kim. They were fighting over Lil' Kim.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah. She was sleeping with both of them. She was sleeping around. So yeah.
She's Big Kim.
She was a little bit of a she got a little bit of around. She was a little bit of a sloop back in the day.
That's fine.
But I'm jealous you have like the connection with the kids. I used to have that when I was teaching. I'm not going to have that till Emery's like 12, 13. She can start giving me all the stuff that's going on.
That's if you're cool enough for her to tell you.
Oh, I'll be cool enough. Don't worry about it.
Sure.
Actually, yeah. I'm gonna be so old then. Oh
yeah, but I have to go tomorrow and get more information because there's just so much.
Well, be sure to relay that. Maybe we'll do a subscriber only Patreon rundown of the Kendrick Lamar Drake beef.
What Cathy learned about rap battles.
Subheading: What Cathy learned from
real life rap battles.
We're way over time. Thanks, Cathy, for a great conversation. Thanks everybody for listening. Subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/justbuylesscoffee. You can subscribe $5 a month. Get access to exclusive deep dive content, exclusive guest interviews, pre-show content that doesn't make it onto the final recording, all that good stuff. You can, if you want to get a little bit more involved with us, you can reach out to us, talk to us, etc. If you're listening on the audio only versions, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube Music is the other one, Podchaser, all those. Make sure you're clicking the download button, find the download button, download the episode to your local device. Download numbers are how we are ranked with other news and political podcasts. If you want to see the video versions of the regular episodes, head on over to YouTube.com/justbuylesscoffee. We have our own YouTube channel. You can see the most recent video episodes there if you want to check out our pretty mugs. Cathy, thank you for a great conversation and for keeping me enlightened on the current rap battle beefs that's going on.
Man. Yeah.
Rap scandals, rapscallions.
Yeah, that's good. Rapscallions.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we will see everybody next time. You've been listening to Just Buy Less Coffee, answering the deeper questions of American politics, featuring Troy Matthews at Keep Troy Blue and Cathy Cannon at Cannon's Fodder. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and X. All opinions are our own.